Good day. We are the MAKA-KALIKASAN Group, and we are to discuss the Republic Act 7610, or the Special Protection of Children Against Abuse, Exploitation, and Discrimination Act. Let us lend your ears in order for you to have further knowledge about the content of the law and what is it for. Disclaimer, we only selected a few articles from the law. So we hope that you will acquire and get a certain knowledge that we conveyed and enjoy watching. Thank you in advance.
Section 4. Formulation of the Program. It is a comprehensive program to be formulated by the Department of Justice and the Department of Social Welfare and Development, coordination with government agencies and private sector, within 1 year of effectively of this act that was made to protect children against child prostitution and other sexual abuse, such as child trafficking, obscene publication and indecent shows, and other acts of abuse and circumstances which endanger child survival and normal development. Section 5. Child prostitution and other sexual abuse. Children. It can be male or female, who for money, profit, or any other consideration, or due to the force or influence of any adult, syndicate, or group, indulge in sexual intercourse or obscene conduct, are considered to be children exploited in prostitution and other sexual abuse.
Mariel Alvarez, and I will be discussing child abuse and physical abuse. What is child abuse? Child abuse, according to Legal Dictionary 2015, it is a mistreatment or neglect of a child by a parent, guardian, or other caregiver, including physical, emotional, and sexual abuse. So when a parent or guardian, whether through actions or failing to act, causes injuries, death, harm emotions, or risk to serious harm to a child, is technically considered as child abuse. There are four major types of child abuse: physical abuse, emotional abuse, sexual abuse, and lastly, child neglect. So, me and my selected group mates will further elaborate and define each types of abuse and its specific examples. So, let's begin. The first major type of child abuse is physical abuse. It is an injury resulting from physical aggression. Physical aggression is a behavior causing a threatening physical harm towards others. So, if an injury was not intended, it is considered as physical abuse. There are four specific examples of physical abuse. First, cut, scratches, bruises, burns, or blisters. So, when a child being experience a slapped, beaten up, heated, that causes scratch or cuts, may hiwa, may gasgas, may kalmot, may bruises, pasa, kinurot, or binugbog, then burns or blisters, pinasok, may makita at matatamong lapnos, or mga paltos. That is physical abuse because there is an effect in the physical appearance of a child. Next, broken bones, dislocated joints, and sprains. So when a child experiences being hardly pushed or napatulak ng malakas, napasalpak, napahampas, and that results or has a consequences having a broke arm or a leg bone, is considered as a physical abuse because apparently there is a physical impact of the child. So next is internal injuries including brain damage. So this is so serious and severe movements and actions involves. That's why the child suffers from it. This is the most worst scenario that a child get into, wherein The child suffers from internal hemorrhage or internal bleeding from the brain, and it is dangerous and lethal that may cause and has a possibility or chances to a child's death. And lastly, emotional and psychological trauma. I guess this is included in physical abuse because the main reason why the child is suffering from a trauma is because he or she is abused physically. Sometimes he felt anxious, depressed, nalulungkot, natatakot, at nababalisa because he is worried that it may be redo again and it might get worse. So basically, that is my point of view about that matter. That's why it is included in a physical abuse. That's all for physical abuse. Thank you.
Sexual abuse, also called as child molestation. It refers to the involvement of a child in sexual activity with an older adolescent. There are three types of sexual offenses against children, namely rape, molestation, and distribution or possession of child pornography. Child sexual abuse can include a wide range of behavior, including engaging in sexual activity with the child, indecent exposure, child grooming, and child exploitation. Child sexual abuse can happen in different varieties of settings, including at home, in work, or at school, in which a child is present. Based on some reports, the perpetrators are related to the victim. PTSD or post traumatic stress disorder, anxiety, and depression are some of the effects that can affect a victim when they are sexually abused. Emotional abuse, also known as psychological or verbal abuse, is the most common type of child abuse. It happens when a child is repeatedly made to feel worthless, unloved, and hated by people. It can range from a simple verbal insult to an extreme form of punishment. Emotional abuse can have a long-lasting negative psychiatric effects than either physical or sexual abuse. It includes yelling, rejection, threatening.
I am Meha Pineda and I will be discussing about the three remaining specific examples of emotional abuse. So we have here rejection, giving a child little or no attention at all, failing to initiate or return affection, and telling a child he is not wanted or loved. Intentionally or not, the effect of rejection towards a child can be devastating. This may lead them to have low self esteem, self doubt, and further from that is depression. For example, for us, young adults, it is hurtful for us and it is painful when we are being rejected by someone whom we love. It is a bad feeling when we heard someone telling us they don't love us or they don't want us. So, what more if a child experiences that? It must be the double of the pain we feel. The child is a child. The nature of a child is to be affectionate towards the person they love, specifically their parents or their family. Let them be loved and cared, not rejected. So that is for rejection. Next will be isolation, confining a child to his room or a small area and preventing him from interacting with other children, forbidding to play and have positive activities. So I have an example for that. There is a girl, her name is Jenny Wiley. I don't know if you already saw it on Facebook, but her case is that she has been isolated or locked up in a room and ignored by her parents for 13 years. And when she is finally rescued, the doctors found out that she has a cognitive level of a 1 year old. Imagine being locked up in a room alone and no interaction with your parents and to other children same as your age. You're just alone, having no one. In result to that, she learned nothing. She has been ignored and isolated. And from that act of her parents, it is inhuman. And in fact, it is an abusive act. So last is corruption. Encouraging the child to engage in criminal activity, teaching him to tell lies to justify such acts and ideas, or encouraging bullying or other bad behavior. Mainly, corruption is teaching a child inappropriate things and wrongdoings. This shouldn't be tolerated because it might cause a child to further develop bad habits and behavior towards other people. Well, you don't want your child to be engaging in such unpleasant things, right? So teach them how to act properly and do things in appropriate and right ways. So that will be the examples for emotional abuse. And moving on, we'll have the fourth major type of child abuse, which is child neglect. It is a very common type of child abuse. It means a deficit in meeting the child's basic needs, including the failure to provide the child adequate supervision, health care, clothing, housing, or even food that they need to eat in order to be healthy. Well, in here, an ignorance of a parent or a person in giving what a child needs. So that will be the discussion for the designated topic for me. I hope you listen and will continue listening to the following discussions, and thank you.
Child neglect comes in three forms: physical, emotional, and medical. Under the physical, child neglect includes such as abandoning a child or give up all the concerns, failing to provide health, food, and drink, failing to provide an appropriate clothes to the weather, failing to ensure good personal hygiene, failing to supervise a child adequately or leaving them with an inappropriate caregiver, exposing a child to an unsafe or unhealthy environment. Under the emotional, child neglect includes failing to provide affection, attention, and emotional support, isolating a child from friends and loved ones, exposing a child to frequent violence, including domestic violence, allowing a child to use drugs or alcohol, or to engage in criminal acts. As child neglect pertains to the withholding essential of the parents or guardians of essential things from the children, there are two other types of it. The first one is the medial child neglect. This one pertains to the failure of the parents from providing the medical attention appropriate and adequate for their children. There are examples of this one like the dental and medical care, hearing recommendations regarding to their mental health, and the last one is preventing the child from getting the appropriate medical treatment. The another type of child abuse is the educational child neglect. This one pertains to the failure of the parents or the guardians to provide the students or their children the right and appropriate education. There are examples of this one, like failing to enroll the students or their children to a education system or institution. Child exploitation pertains to the act of using the minor for profit, labor, sexual gratification, or any other personal or financial advantages. Actual acts that are considered to be a sexual exploitation includes the exposure or explicit language towards a child, indecent touch or exposure to a child, showing pornographic material, involvement of child to a pornography, rape, incest, and sexual slavery. Article 4, Section 7, Child Trafficking. Any person who shall engage in trading and dealing with children including, but not limited to the act of buying and selling of a child for money or any other consideration or barter shall suffer the penalty of reclusion temporal and reclusion perpetual. In its maximum period,
when the victim is under the 12 years of age. The traffic or trade of children is characterized by the recruitment, transport, transfer, and housing of any person by different methods. It may also involve resorting to the force or any other forms of restraint through kidnapping, deceit, fraud, as well as the abuse of the authority.
Child labor. Child labor is a work that deprives children of their childhood, their potential, and their dignity, and that is harmful to physical and mental development. Child labor's work burdens the child like too heavy for a child's age and capabilities. Child works unsupervised or supervised by abusive adults. Very long hours of work, and sometimes they has no time for school, to rest, or to play. Workplace possesses hazards to child's health and life. Child is subject to psychological, verbal, or physical sexual abuse. Child labor are the result of many factors including poverty, social norms, condoning them, lack of decent work opportunities for adults and adolescents, migration, and emergencies. These factors are not only the cause but also a consequence of social inequities reinforced by discrimination. Article 9, Children of Indigenous Cultural Communities. Section 20, Discrimination. Children of indigenous cultural communities shall not be subjected to any and all forms of discrimination. Any person who discriminate against children of indigenous cultural community shall suffer a maximum period of 5,000 pesos more than 10,000 pesos.
Discrimination is an act of treating an individual or a group of people in an illegal or unfavorable manner on the grounds of their race, color, sex, nationality, language, religion, or social origin. So, when we hear the word discrimination, the first thing, probably the first thing that will come up to our minds is unfair treatment. We got here two examples of discrimination, and these are discrimination in indigenous children and discrimination due to disability. So, when we talk about indigenous children, just like other young people, they experience concerning level of despair. But they experience more than that because they concern about their safety, personal safety, and then the bullying and discrimination. The last example is discrimination due to disability. So most of the places and transportation are inaccessible due to person who is suffering from disabilities.